Hello, nerds, and welcome to the Geek Girl Story Salon, where I talk to creatives from across disciplines and across the world about the art of storytelling. I'm your host, Jen Jackalone, lifelong storyteller and head geek in charge. Fun fact, I'm the 2024 centerfold on the CDC's Guidelines for a Zombie Apocalypse page. Today, I'm doubling your fun with two guests. If you've been paying attention to my TikTok or other social spaces, you know that I'm utterly knocked out by the novel Hollow Kingdom, the story of a zombie apocalypse told from the POV of a domesticated crow named ST, which is short for shit turd, and this is probably the earliest I've ever dropped a swear on a show. So my first guest today is Kira Jane Buxton, author of This Little Bite of Brilliance. And also joining us from somewhere in the Northern Mariana Islands, we have a scholar of avian behavioral ecology, say that 10 times fast, and confirmed crow fangirl, Dr. Kaeli Swift. We're going to talk about the wonderful world of animals as portrayed in the Hollow Kingdom novel, how much it overlaps with real science, and why crows are the coolest of all birds. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank
you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you could make it. So what do we think about crows? Great birds or the greatest birds?
The best, I think. Yeah. Kaeli is the crow pro between us, but I've befriended now a few of them in my neighborhood, and without hesitation, I call them the loves of my life. So
yeah, and
go ahead, sorry.
All I was going to add is, I think Kira has demonstrated really nicely that what makes these birds so special and unique is that her experience is not unusual. Mm-hmm. There's a connection between people and these birds and we see this all over the world. There are many different species of crows and ravens that exist globally, and these kinds of relationships are quite common, and there's good reason for that. And I think it says a lot about these birds and our connection to them and why they're so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know this when I reached out, but you two have appeared together before.
Yeah.
So,
we have, yes.
When was that? How did it go?
It was great. Tremendous fun. I'm trying to remember when exactly it was. Must have been 2019, I think.
I think it was 2019. It was for the Snowho Libraries. It was a library event. When I think shortly after the first book came out. Yeah. I think, great minds think alike, and like yourself, people were like, okay, we want to talk about Hollow Kingdom. Wouldn't it be fun? And so, we're a good little package deal sometimes.
It's tremendous for me because, obviously I lie for a living. I'm a writer. I make up stuff, and it's great to have Kaeli's perspective, and scientific mind to kind of swoop in, so to speak, and, make sure, it really convey the information and the sort of research that's going on with crows. It's kind of fun to have the juxtaposition of the two of us, I think.
Yes.
Did you do a lot of research when you were writing the book?
Yeah, I did tons, and delicious, wonderful research about the natural world, which really just comes from being a nature nerd. I had a very biocentric upbringing, and I loved animals always, and so when I finally came to the idea about, I think I'm going to write a story about crows, and like from the perspective of a crow, which initially was incredibly intimidating. How do you even go about that? How does that work? But I'd started reading, I'd started out with some like Bernd Heinrich, Mind of the Raven. So I was reading about ravens first, and then John Marsloff, who Kaeli's worked with, he wrote Gift of the Crow, and I started reading that, and then The Genius of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman, and then just like anything I could get my hands on. I wanted to know about octopuses. I wanted to know about, and then like, how could I possibly cram all this information into the novel, and I did it sort of, shamelessly. It is definitely, all of that, a lot of that research is in there. And some of it was taken out because my editor was like, I don't think the reader needs to know how many teeth a hippo has, but maybe they do.
That's the hard part, isn't it? When you're like brimming with information and you want to just put it all in there, and you have to have somebody,
Yes.
on the leash and say, all right, maybe not that.
Yes. Editors, marvelous. They're wonderful humans. Yeah.
We hate it, but we need them. There are a lot of really fascinating ideas in the story. One that I loved was a thing that you called aura, which was sort of, I guess you described it sort of as almost like a bird internet, although that's not really quite what it is. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So there's this idea that there's, ST sort of describes aura as this ongoing network in the natural world where everything is in communication with everything else. And, honestly, I do believe there's a sort of aura happening. There is communication going on, interspecies communication. So at all times. And the idea came from, I would step outside and I would engage with the birds in my backyard. And it started with the crows, and then I ended up hand feeding the little hummingbirds. And then the squirrels started coming in, and then the juncos were there. And I realized I really, especially with feeding hummingbirds, you really have to sit very still. And it's kind of a meditation, you're stepping away from the world of human woes and kind of really being present. And I found that, I was starting to notice that, the robins would make alert calls, and the juncos also were sort of like the robins to me seemed like little spies, and then the juncos were very much like patrol, and they would do an alarm call, and I started to recognize that call to the point where I could tell that there was a cat in my yard without seeing the cat. The juncos had communicated that. So, and the squirrels are listening to that. There is a kind of necessarily for survival, they're paying attention to cues. So my, literary mind just kind of got a little bit excited by that idea and expanded to there being aura, echo, and web. A web being communication under the soil, echo being water, communication. So yeah, it's ineluctably I have taken great liberties with the idea, but it's grounded in a little bit of what I was experiencing being outside with the birds.
And so Kaeli, from the science side, how does that line up with what you know to be true?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to web as much, but that's probably the network that is most closely reflected in what we understand, at least so far, in the natural world. And certainly, like Kira was describing, vertebrates are often very sensitive to like the alarm calls of one another, right? There's very good adaptive reason for that. But there's been a lot of incredible science in the last couple of decades that have revealed how much plants communicate with each other, which is why I was picking out the sort of subterranean communication specifically, because for such a long time we very underappreciated how communicative plants were. I mean, they're these stationary things. They're obviously non-thinking. So we were sort of like, plants, I don't know, they're just there. And now we understand that there is a very, very broad network that really connects forests in ways that we're probably only just beginning to really appreciate. So there is absolutely scientific truths to this idea that organisms and across species are connected, sometimes in limited and subtle ways, and sometimes in very broad ways.
Like the mycorrhiza, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a wonderful book. I don't know if you've read Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake, which is oh yes, it's wonderful. It just expands your experience of the world. It makes you excited to learn more about the natural world and what's happening. And I think it's a fabulous book.
Well,
yeah, those expansive experiences are some of the best. And I think that is one of those pivotal things where it's easy to become very myopic and sort of, especially as scientists, right? We have our like little niche thing that we study and we're like looking at this little tiny level.
Yeah.
And then just to remember how connected and huge the world is. And it's just those can be really life-changing lessons.
Yeah. And humbling, and it lets us step out of our own stories for a moment. And I think that's really why I wanted to tell this story from animal perspectives, because apocalypse stories especially tend to be pretty anthropocentric. It's just like a small group of peeps who have, probably really antisocial behaviors in normal life that end up being excellent for them in the apocalypse. And then, they go forth and those stories are fantastic. But I thought, gosh, we're kind of missing such a big piece of the these stories. So yeah, I get very excited about this stuff.
It shows.
Yeah.
Well, I do too, which is why you're both here. I do actually have a fair number of science communicators on the show, because I think that's kind of it's a very important part of the story of us, just like humanity, life, the universe, and everything. And actually, I loved Merlin Sheldrake's book, and I wanted to circle back for 1 second, because are you familiar with his brother?
Oh yeah, he's a musician.
Yeah, Cosmo is brilliant.
Cosmo, yeah.
Yeah, he did that one record that was all sampled bird calls.
Oh wow. I only know his one song about moss, which I really like.
But yeah, no, Wake Up Calls is a beautiful album, and it's all just sampled bird calls, and each one he samples, so you have like the nightingale, and then you have the, just all the way through like different birds, and he tries to compose the whole song out of samples of just calls from that particular one bird.
Wow. I have to ask, does he do crows? Is there a crow one?
There is not a crow, shockingly.
It's Cosmo.
Which is
Because
quite
they're technically songbirds.
Well, hopefully he's a listener.
Yeah.
We'll inspire him.
They are technically songbirds, aren't they? Even though,
they are.
It's people don't like the sound of their calls, but I love them. I think they're delightful.
And they produce a lot more sounds than most people are familiar with. And I think that's one of the pieces that when people start getting the crow bug, I think that hooks them is, the average person's experience of crow calls are the loudest calls that they, produce. And those are the ones that get replicated in media and stuff. But they have a huge repertoire of much quieter calls, more whispery, beautiful, bell-like sounds, all different kinds of things. But you really only get to experience those if you put the willingness and the time into spending quiet moments with crows. And I think that is one of those things when people start doing it, they sort of start to realize that there is so much to learn from these birds than maybe they thought. You're like, oh, crows are everywhere. What's there to know about crows? A lot.
Do people send you, are you getting a flood of crow behavior and films and things?
Yeah, I get a lot of requests, and unfortunately, crow communication is one of the biggest, I describe it as one of the biggest sort of like black boxes of our understanding of crows. I shouldn't say a lot, but some animals have very structured calls, right? So chickadees, you were describing juncos, but chickadees are probably the more familiar one. And where their calls kind of have these like direct translations, so to speak. We refer to that as referential calling. They have a specific call that means cat. They have a specific call that means aerial predator. And crows don't have referential calling. It's very contextual. And so it's been very difficult to unpack what many of the individual sounds and just the multitude of ways they can put them together, it's been very difficult to unpack what all of that means. And so people do email me very consistently, what does this mean? And I often have to just say, I don't know. I'm sorry. Maybe somebody knows besides me, but I don't know. That's a huge field.
It is. My friend Doug Wacker is studying that. Have you met Doug?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. And I noticed that mine, I think, dumb themselves down around me, I'm pretty sure, which is because I've heard when I go visit the UW Bothell and watch them in the evenings, those are when you really hear the complex calls.
Yeah.
Sort of back and forth in the evening, and mine around me tend to use the same cause, which is yeah, I think they're dumbing it down for me, which is fair enough.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So Kira, has it been your whole life? I mean, I know that's been animals in general for you always, but has it been crows specifically? Has that always been a thing for you, or?
No, I did not grow up in places where crows were as prevalent or ubiquitous as they are here in the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Dubai and Jakarta, Indonesia, Korea, and various places, and wonderful places where I was experiencing different animals. So camels were more the thing I saw as a kid. We used to get them coming into the backyard in Dubai, and that was always pretty wonderful. But it wasn't until we moved here to the Pacific Northwest, and I just started to notice them, that they were everywhere. And then I had this experience where I tried to rescue a crow who had a broken wing. And there was a tree with about 60 crows in it, and these crows were all screaming for this one crow who was really in bad shape. And so I thought, oh gosh, okay. So I tried to get the crow. I approached and thought, oh no, this is going to be a disaster. Like 60 crows are going to descend, and it's going to be like the birds. But they didn't. They all went quiet, and I was able to put this little crow into the box and tried to take it off to a wildlife center, and the little crow didn't make it, which is terrible. But it did change. I started to notice them. They were following me from then on when I was going on my walks, and then I ended up befriending this dyad, this pair, and I got very close to the female, and just to spend time with her and sit out with her, and I got to really experience all these really incredible behaviors up close. And she had a very distinctive personality to me, seeing her up close, which, again, it's like, this is where I'm not a scientist, so the anthropomorphism can fly. But yeah, I really could see that she was goofy. She had a wonky wing, and she drooled when she ate. She was goofy, playful, and her partner was not like that. Very sort of austere crow. Beautiful, beautiful bird, but he did not want to come as close to me as she did, and so many of ST's behaviors came from those interactions. Yeah.
What about you, Kaeli? Has it always been crows for you, or?
No, when I was a kid, I've gone through many phases. There was starting with bugs. I was going to be an entomologist for a long time. And then I moved on to wolves. I loved wolves. And then I wanted to study cephalopods. I got really into marine biology and octopuses. And it really wasn't until I was in college that I sort of circled back. I'd always loved birds. I'd been a bird watcher, but it wasn't until then that I kind of was able to appreciate the opportunity that crows provided in the context of the kinds of scientific questions that I was interested in asking, and the bigger themes of what I liked to think about, and the way that crows actually made a really excellent model for those questions as they related to the relationship between social behavior and social dynamics and cognition and intelligence. And in all of those creatures, that was kind of what I was always thinking about. And it just, it all came together at some point that I realized crows actually were probably the most practical way that I could pursue some of those questions. And And then from there, like Kira described, you start spending time with individual birds and seeing that just the incredible depth of personality that they have. And when you start in on those really intimate relationships, there's just no going back, because there's just nothing like it. And I'm sure people who work closely with, wolf packs and octopuses will say the same of their, study animals. But crows are the ones that I work with, so I'm going to talk the most about crows. And they are the best.
Yeah. Morphizing them? Do you do that?
So, oh yeah. I mean, I am very cautious to remember that crows are not just people with bird suits on, right? So I think the challenging balance is to recognize the inherent uniqueness of living things, and to appreciate that the way that animals experience the world around them can be very different, and can be different in ways that are almost impossible for us to imagine. It's so outside of the realm of our experience, of our sensory experience, for example. So appreciating that uniqueness exists, but then also appreciating that there are themes in the natural world of experiences or abilities or skills or whatever it is that have been adaptively beneficial for multiple animals, right? So we think about, our emotional intelligence as people. I have for a long time looked at that as sort of one of our superpowers. I think every creature on Earth has its sort of superpower that has allowed it to most effectively exploit its niche in the world. That's what's made its species successful. But just because one species has taken something to its most extreme doesn't mean that other species don't possess a version of that as well. So the anthropomorphism for me sort of is that balance of not thinking of crows as just like people with crow suits on, but also appreciating that their experience of the world, while it's different than ours, it's not completely different than ours. And they too might benefit tremendously from very rich emotional lives, from, these complex social systems, like all of these things that some people use to define the human experience probably are possessed by other creatures for the same reason that we do, because it has helped them survive and it's adaptive for them.
That's such a great framing of it, because I think, certainly because I've written a book with animal voices, I've taken these great liberties, and there's absolutely a lot of anthropomorphism in there. But it's funny, because I've written this, I really have seen how anthropomorphism is something really seen as an anathema in certain, certainly in some scientific circles, and like, I mean, even just speaking of Merlin Sheldrake, he talks about how anthropomorphism is perceived. And I think he says something like, anthropomorphism is often thought of as an illusion that rises like a blister in soft minds, untrained, undisciplined, unhardened. And I almost fell off my chair when I read that, because it really is kind of seen as an anathema. And I think that there should be a balance. The primatologist Frans de Waal talks about the fact that, we sometimes, put ourselves as humans on this imaginary, at the top of this imaginary intelligence ladder, and that does a disservice. We're using our tongues to sort of downgrade certain species, even in the way we talk about it. We'll talk about, for example, two chimps kissing. We won't call it kissing; we call it mouth-to-mouth contact. Or a friend is a close affiliation partner instead of friends. And it's fascinating. He actually calls it linguistic castration, which was, whoa. But I understand it's a very it's a difficult thing to measure, intelligence in species when you're looking at something like a cephalopod and, what they're able to do, and birds who are able to hide seeds and then recall where those seeds are. But Kaeli, I just love how you phrased that, the sort of balance of it. Really cool. I'm going to borrow that from you.
All right, yeah, to take it away. But what was I going to add? There was something I wanted to add, and now I can't remember what it was. All right, well, no, you can cut that out.
Sorry, I waffled on a bit there.
No. Yeah. No.
No, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
I do think though there is a relationship between nature and art. Sometimes it's in the way that you did it with this book, or Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass, and even Walden, although Thoreau is a little bit bullshit, but it certainly is a subject and an inspiration for us mofos. But what do you think is sort of the thread that ties them together?
Well, I think story is a really wonderful way to nurture engagement with science and the natural world, I think, and that was a big part of the impetus for writing this book was, I was experiencing some pretty serious climate anxiety and some, climate existentialism. And I wanted to write something that was a love letter to nature, And so, yeah, there's definitely, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think nature inspires pretty much all of my art. I've written something else very different that's coming out in January, but there's that same paean to the natural world. It's still there. I'm probably going to continue banging that drum. We're lucky. The biodiversity is the very best thing about our planet, and I think when you I think this is the power of storytelling. It lights up parts of the brain that they've done studies where the brain can't really distinguish between a reading experience and an actual experience, and so you're really when you're reading a story, you're in some respects you're living that, you are having that emotional experience, and so yeah, I feel like story and art are just beautifully entwined. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important for us to remember that, stories and art is the original science communication. We have a very particular bias in the Western sciences of what it means to conduct science and what it means to communicate science in a academic way. And I think that while there is great value to the scientific method, obviously, and to the way that we do things, I think that it has, I think there's been a long harmful history of the ways that has poisoned our ability to appreciate storytelling and Indigenous knowledge as a very deep and meaningful understanding of the world with a different approach, and so we've sort of used that as a way to undermine or dismiss people's understandings of things because it hasn't followed what we believe is the only true way to conduct science. And that's simply not true. Humans all over the world developed immense understandings of the worlds around them without the scientific method, right? And the way that they shared information about what they were finding, which was essential not only to their survival, but to their identities as communities and as peoples, was through art and storytelling. And so I think it's so important for us to, not divorce those things and to appreciate the ways that they have, the majority of human history saw those as being very unified pursuits.
You're making me think of Robin Wall Kimmerer's work. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Grass and And Gathering Moss, which I feel like that doesn't get not as much love as it should. I love that book, but yeah, I feel like that should be requisite reading. Just that, beautiful, beautiful, generous sharing of Indigenous wisdom, sort of remindings, and then her botany, specialty. So it's incredible. Yeah.
It's interesting. I had read a book called The Disordered Cosmos, by this astrophysicist. Name is escaping me right now, but she was this, Black, Jewish, non-binary, queer, femme-presenting scientist in a community where there's not really a whole lot of that. And she talks about indigenous knowledge and how things get lost, and that even comes down to the base level of like math. Like we think Euclidean math is everything, and straight lines are everything, and there are, indigenous mathematical systems, some of which are partly or almost completely lost, which don't base everything on the straight line. And that's wild to me, that even the basic things that we think of as like you said, the scientific method, and like there are rules for how we do things, that's not even necessarily, that's not the only way to think about these things. And and again, I think that storytelling is there to kind of keep those ideas alive and preserve them.
Yeah. I'll just add, Chandra Prescott Weinstein is who wrote that book, and I am not a physicist at all. Like I get very bored, honestly. Thinking about it, it's like way too overwhelming for me, but I will just offer to your listeners, it's an excellent book, and she's describing quarks. And, I took away maybe this much of what she offered, but that's way more than I normally do. And yeah, I think, in that, in her own style, but a part of that greater narrative with Robin Wall Kimmerer, does a really good job of sort of making that connection and explaining that the limitations to Western science and the ways that we could, if we opened our minds, it could really benefit us as scientists.
Thank you for remembering that. I couldn't believe that I just couldn't come up with it. I would like actually both of you guys' thoughts on this, because the book depicts Seattle after the humans have stopped humaning for a while. And the way that you sort of have shown nature kind of taking over all these urbanized spaces is really interesting. And I was wondering, like, how heavily did you research that part of it, as far as like what would really happen if we kind of, if the humans stopped humaning? How long would that take?
Yeah, if we stopped humaning. I did. I read a great book, The World Without Us by Alan Weisman, which is a fantastic book. And then there was a CNN series. It's a little bit older now, but it's a whole series of like what would happen in the first 2 hours would be one episode, and then the half a day, and then a full a week, months. And I went into it thinking, oh no, this is going to be, once I knew I was writing in the sort of creative space of a dystopian event, I thought, oh no, this is going to be so depressing. It's going to be awful. And it wasn't. It wasn't depressing. It was fascinating. Really, the book was incredible. The World Without Us. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be awful, depressing, sad. I'm going to be miserable. And I wasn't. I was really kind of excited by the findings and how quickly things would kind of rewild. And I found, if anything, I was kind of inspired by that, because, I'd look up from the book and I'd think, oh, it's all still here. It's all here for us to protect and engage with. And it filled me with a kind of, I don't know, it sort of, it reminded me of something that seems very unrelated. But I had been reading about astronauts, Michael Collins, and he had, spent his whole career, eyes and heart and everything, focused on being in space. And then he's in space and he's looking back at our planet, and he experiences this sort of tremendous, almost a grief, an extreme nostalgia, very overwhelming feeling of love, and a feeling of how delicate our fragile little planet is hurtling through space. And they call it the overview effect, I think. And that's, I kind of had some sort of research experience of that. This thing has not happened. We still have this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place that we live. And yeah, so that was a surprise of the research. I wasn't depressed. I felt hope. Yeah.
Love that. So Kaeli, your work right now is not actually about crows. It's about something else, another bird that's localized entirely on this one little island. Is that right?
It is, yeah. I'm currently working with a bird called the Tinian monarch, which for any bird watchers in your listening audience, they may be more familiar with just kind of flycatchers, which we have represented in the United States. And monarchs are a type of flycatcher which are not represented in the United States, continental United States, I should say. And so there's a bird out here, and it historically has lived only on Tinian, which is really interesting because at its closest point, we have other islands that are only 6 miles away. And there's just not good evidence that they ever reproduced on these other islands. So they just kind of got to Tinian and they said, this is great. I can't disagree with them. It is very beautiful. And so I'm out here. It's a very, like many small island species, it's understudied. And so I'm out here trying to get a better handle on its just general life history with a particular emphasis on reproductive ecology, and then looking at some questions around survivorship and territory size and that kind of thing.
And how developed is the island? Are there people there and houses and things, or is it like a Swiss Family Robinson kind of situation?
No, so Tinian is one of those places that it's sort of appalling that so few Americans have heard of it, because it's probably one of the most important places in geopolitical history in the world. So Tinian has a very long history of, imperialist occupation. Traditionally, the community of people here were the Chamorro people, but starting in about the 1500s, it went from Spanish occupation, German occupation, US, to, during the course of World War II, Japanese. So the Americans recognized the strategic power of capturing the Mariana Islands and Tinian in particular, which they did from the Japanese. And so it's actually on Tinian that we assembled the atomic bombs and launched them. This is where the Enola Gay took off from. Wow. And so the Mariana Islands has remained a United States Commonwealth. So it has even though geographically, ethnically, this is a united community with Guam. Geopolitically, it is different because Guam is a territory. But so today, prior to the Spanish depopulation of Tinian, there was probably about 30,000 Chamorro people that lived here. They were completely depopulated for about 250 years. At the peak of World War II, this was the airfield on Tinian where we assembled the bombs and launched the planes, was the largest, busiest airport in the world. Today, and I can't remember the numbers of US personnel that were based here, but it was tens of thousands. Today, there is about anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people that live here. The US military leases 2/3 of the island, but there's no permanent military base here. So it's not like Oahu or Guam. So there is infrastructure, there's towns, there's restaurants, all kinds of things, but it's also a very rural community. So it's interesting because it's very tropical, right? Obviously, being in the middle of the Pacific, we're kind of for those that don't know, we're sandwiched basically between Japan and Australia. So very remote, but very tropical, close to the equator. And yet, because of those long histories of occupation, there are, ranching traditions that feel very familiar to me as somebody who has lived in like Eastern Washington for a very long time. So, it's a really interesting, very rich historied community to live in.
Wow.
How long have you been there now?
3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long are you going to stay? Do you know yet?
I don't know. Every year I say, this is the last year. I'm not gonna, I'm ready to move on. And then a new project, funding for a new project comes in and it sounds interesting. And I do just love living here. I love the community of people, our neighborhood, the access to the ocean, these birds, like they're not crows, but boy, do they have personality. Like they have a lot of crow tendencies that I just adore. And so I keep not making good on my threats to leave.
I wouldn't. I'm coming to you now. That sounds
It's wonderful. Yeah. And they would actually love the US tourists. So there are a number of Pacific Island communities that say, please don't. This is not one of those communities. They would love Americans to come here. So I encourage you to do so.
All right. Next year on Tinian Island.
Yeah.
So I know it's getting a little late for you. So I think, we'll wrap it up, but I would like to see your show and tell items if you have them.
Yeah, I'll go first. So, when we moved into this, we're in a house, but it sort of doubles as like a field house home. And, as remote scientists, like it's one of the challenges of moving around, right? Is you need stuff to live. So we were very fortunate in that they had some of our collaborators and the people who own the house help kind of furnish things. And so one of the things that came with the house was this mug, which is from one of the resorts here. So it has a K. So that works for me because my first name starts with a K. So I was like, all right, this is going to be my mug. And then as a very sweet gift, my partner encouraged one of our friends here, who's an incredibly talented artist, to hand paint this beautiful little picture of a crow doing a little peek out. This is actually based on a photograph by June Hunter, who's another phenomenal Corvid storyteller artist. And so it's just sort of the like getting here and getting my little K cup and having that be sort of this piece of familiarity when we first got to Tinian, and then that this was hand painted by a friend of mine based on a picture of another friend of mine that my boyfriend had made. It was just the whole thing just delights me. So coffee mug with a K and a beautiful little crow.
Hand painted crow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
I am just sending a message to have mine brought in.
Okay.
Actually, I will grab him. 1 second.
Okay. Kira thought she couldn't show her little dog.
Yeah. People, what do people love more on a Zoom call than a pet? Nothing.
So my show and tell is
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
and he is almost 15 years old. And you can see he's got his little bow tie on from his grooming. He had his beard brushed and washed today for this occasion. And he is just the most exquisite pup. I've had him since he was a pup. We rescued him in LA. He is a Brussels Griffon mix. And he mostly got the Brussels. And he's hilarious. I mean, talk about animals with personality. He has very strong opinions about things. He does not like the toaster. We get the toaster out. I have to, he will sulk in the yard. He doesn't like it when the beat drops in a song. That's offensive. And
Yeah.
he's afraid of his own farts. So, but yeah, I
Excellent.
adore him. So any chance to show him off.
Yeah. All right, but here's the question, Kira.
Yes.
How would he have done as ST's partner in crime?
Oh, dear. I think horrendous. He's so stubborn. He's so stubborn. I don't think ST would be able to convince him to do anything. And he's not heroic. Listen, I'll tell you, he's not a heroic pup. He's my whole heart. But I will tell you, he doesn't like, for example, if we walk on the street, he will kind of push me toward the traffic, you know, like, 'cause I don't want to be close to traffic. That seems unsafe. You do it. So I don't know about how, you know, yeah, I'm not sure how you do, buddy.
I feel like with that incredible, glorious beard, I feel like he should be like assigning things at like the dock, like sending workers on to their assignments, and you know, maybe he should have like a whiskey or something. But
I agree.
Yeah.
Cigar and the whiskey, and yeah, that's exactly the vibe. That's exactly, you've nailed it. That's who he is. He's and he makes grown men giggle. He makes, you know, them jealous with his beard. Yeah, he's a star. He's a star. So thank you for letting me share.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure because everybody loves dogs.
Yes. Yes, they are wonderful. They are wonderful. Yes, I have two. And the other one is, let me see if I can grab him. Come here. I have a puppy as well. So this one's a bit wriggly, but he is also and this is Geek.
Gig, that's perfect.
Yes, named after his Geek, little friendly monster from the Dark Crystal. Yeah. Good boy. He's just 1.5. So he's
I see the wriggliness.
Yeah, he's full of energy. Okay, buddy. It's their dinner time now. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. I'm gonna just do a quick sign off. This has been honestly an absolute delight. So that is our show, you beautiful nerds. What a season we've got in the chute. Star Trek's Michelle Hurd, author Caitlin Starling, filmmaker Nick Roth. It's going to be an absolute blast. I've been your host, Jen Jackalone. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this show, and check out the link in the description to follow these ladies and their amazing work. And if you haven't read Hollow Kingdom yet, what are you even doing with your life? For best results, insert in brain. Stay hydrated, take care, take it easy, and stay geeky.